God says that you can own people as property. He says that you can beat them with a rod too. He commands genocide in Deuteronomy, in Numbers, and in Samuel. I mean, they have a goddamn baby barbecue in Numbers. Like, is all of this in line with Christian ethics?
No.
So then God doesn't fit within Christian ethics.
The biblical library is a continuing story, and everything written in it has to be contextualized by the entire text.
So this statement that everything written in it has to be contextualized, I mean, in a sense, obviously that's true. You have to read things within context. But in what context is it okay to slaughter innocent men, women, and children, or take slaves, when you lay waste to a village? There is no context in which that is okay. This reminds me of the presidents of Ivy League colleges saying that we have to contextualize what happened after Hamas assaulted Israel and slaughtered 1,200 people on October 7. This is obscene to say anything about we must contextualize this. And again, this is what happens. This is your brain on faith, in effect. This is your brain on religion. And Peterson has to say this kind of thing, because otherwise he's going to have to condemn God and say that the Bible is a book of horrors. And he can't do that because he won't challenge religion.
There's 65,000 hyperlinks in the biblical text. And you can take pieces of it out of context and criticize them, and that's what you're doing. But that's a mistake, I think. It's an analytic mistake, because you're putting the cart before the horse.
I really don't think so. I think that if we say that something is Christian ethics, then I think that all of the books essential to Christianity would fit with it, especially if it's like the main character. When we're talking about
How do you deal with
God,
the morality of war?
So,
how do you think you should deal with the morality of war?
Sure. Because I feel like the morality, like I feel like Christian ethics, like this is kind of, I guess I just think it's like kind of an absurdity to say that God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, but sure, well, we can go on my ethics, that's totally fine.
I don't know what you mean by an absurdity. What game are you playing with that
Well, I just think that it's an absurdity to say that the Christian God doesn't fit within Christian ethics, that like the Christian God isn't like Christian ethical.
I said that the specific statements that you made don't take the context of the stories into account, and so that your analytical approach is faulty.
Sure.
Don't put words in my mouth.
So here again, we have Peterson just getting vicious and nasty when this young man is just saying things that are true about the Bible and about the idea that if things God calls for in the Bible and things treated as good in the Bible are not, if you can't stomach the idea that this is good, that there's a real problem there in calling yourself a Christian, or since we're talking about the Old Testament, in many of these cases it would be a Jew or a Muslim as well. And this is a perfect, these young people are a bit heated because it's a heated debate. And Peterson has been really nasty to people all the way through this. So you can understand why they're coming to that chair kind of, with some gusto. But Peterson is just being nasty, and he's just talking down to people and being rude. And this is an indication that he's not comfortable with the ideas he's trying to profess, because on some level, I think he knows that they're not true, or at least that they're not defensible. And it's bizarre to see this happening. And it's really sad, because he has so much popularity right now, and so many young people turn to him for guidance. And what they're getting is word salads at best, and poison as well.
So in 1 Samuel 15:3, God says, go and slaughter the Amalekites, slaughter the men, the women, the children, the infants. What's the justification for that? Is that in line with Christian ethics?
That's a good question. I don't really know what to do with the terrible, blood-soaked, saturated history of the human past.
The question isn't how do we deal with the blood-soaked history of the human past. This questioner is asking Peterson, what do you do with the fact that God ordered this slaughter in the Bible? So Peterson is completely evading the question here. And that is a real demonstration of just pure intellectual dishonesty on his part.
We're all saddled with the problem of the catastrophes that got us here, aren't we?
Yeah, but this
And
one was commanded by God. That's the problem.
Yeah,
That's
well-
what differentiates it from anything else, is that this one, it's God
do you
saying,
think that
go
there's
and
ever
do this
such a thing?
atrocity.
Do you think that there's ever such a thing as a righteous war?
This is evasive too. Do you think there's ever such a thing as a righteous war? Well, yeah, a war of self-defense. If Russia attacks Ukraine and Ukraine defends itself, it's a righteous war on the part of Ukraine, not on the part of Russia. If Iranian proxies attack Israel and Israel defends itself, that's a justified and perfectly legitimate war on the side of Israel, not on the side of the attackers. But this has nothing to do with this young man's question. So again, the young man tried to get Peterson back on track, and Peterson once again evaded. This is the height of dishonesty.
This one
people-
certainly wasn't a just war. The context for the Amalekite slaughter is that 400 years earlier, they fought one battle, which they lost, and God says, that's it, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the goddamn earth. And then 400 years later, he commands the Israelites to genocide their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. That's not a just war at all. And also, a genocide is not a war.
Well, a genocide can be a war, but
Absolutely not.
Nope.
The genociding of the Amalekites, the men, the women, and the infants, that's not a war. The infants aren't combatants.
look, I already said that it's very difficult to look at the blood-soaked past and to know exactly what to do about it.
Again, absolute evasion. This young man keeps trying to get Peterson to come back to the Bible, back to what actually happens in the Bible, in the story, and what God actually called for. And Peterson, a third time now, at least 3 times, has completely evaded the question and tried to get out of that hot seat that he's been put in here. When you know that you cannot answer something because your ideas will disclose your evil if you do, you need to check the premises on your moral code, on your religion, on whatever the thing is you're trying to defend. And for Peterson to be unwilling to do this is the height of dishonesty and, frankly, just pure evil at this point. This man has no business being regarded as any kind of an intellectual. He's not an intellectual. He's at best a mystic postmodernist, water-muddying moron. And that's at best, because that's implying that his brain has turned, or his mind has turned essentially to sauce so that he can't think anymore. The only alternative is some degree of added to that of evil, that he's just simply intentionally trying to mislead people and take people down a road to hell on earth. This is morally obscene.
The answer I gave to the gentleman who was sitting here before you is that it's necessary to read a text like the Bible at all of its levels of analysis simultaneously.
It's necessary to read the Bible at all levels of analysis simultaneously. You have this book that doesn't make any sense to begin with, that is just made up stories about a guy in the sky, pardon the frank and not so subtle metaphor there, but that's what we have here, this idea that there's a guy in the sky who dictates what we have to do, and we have to love and adore him and accept his existence on faith, etc., etc. And he's tells people to slaughter whole societies and women and children included. And Peterson now wants to tell us that we've got to read this book with all the levels of understanding to get this stuff out of it. No, we don't. What we need to do with the book is call it what it is, trash, and move it out of the realm of human beings using it for any guidance whatsoever. I'm not saying burn the Bible. It's an important historic document, but it is not something that anyone should be getting any guidance from, and it is not something that any reputable intellectual or even remotely good intellectual should be holding up as a value.
And there's a directional morality that emerges across time, that has its roots in the Old Testament, for example, with its restrictions against murder specifically, that makes itself manifest in the Christian texts as the insistence on voluntary self-sacrifice as the foundational belief. That's a profoundly anti-violence ethos.
Self-sacrifice as the foundational belief of what's good is not anti-violence. It is precisely pro-violence, because if you morally should sacrifice, but you don't want to, but that's the morally correct way to be, how is society to be set up? How is society to deal with recalcitrants who refuse to do what they morally should do? This is precisely what gives rise to governments that force people to sacrifice, whether these are theocracies or communist dictatorships or fascist dictatorships or the like. So Peterson is trying to run toward a safe zone of the idea of self-sacrifice being good, because he knows everyone accepts that as true, because almost everyone does. And it's a comfort zone that a lot of Christians and other religionists go to. They're like, oh, but whatever the Bible might say, we got to agree that self-sacrifice is a good thing. Let's try to end this debate on something we can all agree on. And this is where people need to learn to not agree on that, but to challenge it and say, why on earth would we permit human sacrifice of any kind or degree anywhere? This is the future of sanity and rational thinking in regard to morality.
And do you think that God is by his very essence perfect?
You'll have to provide more.
Sure, just like maximally great and all like the
think
great
it's a
making
definition.
qualities.
Sure.
Yeah,
By
like
definition.
flawless. Yeah. So
Okay,
so
so
does a
wait a
flawless
sec,
thing
wait a
change?
sec.
Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better information over time, or would a flawless thing say, here's what's good, here is the absolute good thing to do at all circumstances in time?
Well, we know some of that.
Is God's word moral or not? Is God's word the law or not? In a sense, this is a silly question, because there's no evidence for the existence of God, and the very idea that we even have to be talking about God is absurd. There is no God. There's no evidence for God. There's no need for God. And every time we try to bring God into the equation, we get absurdities in conceptual engagement, and we get atrocities in physical engagement. So let's just get rid of this thing, and let's call out intellectuals like Peterson and make them define their terms, as these young people are trying to do. In a sense, this debate has been a good thing, because it demonstrates the way in which Peterson's evasions and vagueness are used by him and by others to skirt these issues, and it demonstrates the need for clear, concise definitions and for clarity generally.
Wait,
Tell
so
the truth. That's one.
That's totally fine, but
No,
presumably...
You don't get to skate over
because
that
this is a
with
straw
that's
man.
totally fine.
It's a straw man of my position. It's a straw man of the argument. So
In what
the
way?
argument
No,
is
wait,
that God...
wait a sec. You
Well, I'm already
said
waiting a sec.
find one maxim that's transcendent across situations.
I didn't
and
say
I
any
just
of
did.
those words. I'm not sure what
Okay,
conversation
rephrase.
you're a part of.
Don't be a smartass.
So this young man just said, I didn't say any of those words, and Peterson says, don't be a smartass, and gets all stern and top down. Whereas just a few minutes ago, Peterson said, don't put words in my mouth. Like, what is the double standard? A double standard is a demonstration of the fact that the person applying the double standard knows that he is wrong and just refuses to accept the fact. Whether it's for personal psychological issues or for tribal issues, very often an instance of tribalism. But in any event, it is a confession of dishonesty.
So in my mind, I guess by my lights, a perfect being doesn't change. A perfect being, if they're maximally good, maximally moral...
Does our understanding of the perfect being change?
Our understanding might, but
Okay,
presumably what the perfect being is revealing...
Well, I agree. How do we distinguish between that, though, at the human level?
How do we distinguish between whether...
Between our transforming understanding of perfection and perfection itself.
Between our
we can only... Yeah, well, we can only see through our own lenses.
Presumably a perfect being would be revealing all of these aspects all the time, especially if God's outside of time. I don't know how a God who's outside of time is revealing different things at different times. That just seems like incoherent to me.
Imagine something that's perfect.
Sure.
And complete.
Sure.
Okay, and it's trying to communicate with creatures who are anything but that.
This business of imagine something that's perfect and that's complete. How can you imagine something that's perfect and complete without a standard and even a sphere of identity? Any indicator. I could say, imagine a perfect apple, and you can pull that into your mind. Or I can say, imagine a perfect date, or something like that. And you can start to work with it. But imagine a perfect thing without any kind of a standard baked into it. This is the fantasy world of religion. It's just like, we're just going to imagine perfect. Okay, I have perfect in my mind. There we go. That's God. This is not thinking. This is not philosophy. This is at best the most primitive form of philosophy, which is what religion is. It's trying to figure out the nature of the world and what's good and bad and right and wrong and how we can know these things by resorting to a prehistoric way of using the human mind. It's insane.
God is literally the one who created us. He could have created us in a way where we would always be receptive to these principles, where we don't have to go across like a learning curve where, maybe we'll understand
maintain free will.
thousands of years into the future, maybe we'll do it. Oh, also, if you believe in an all-knowing God, then free will is impossible because
Wait a sec. Let's not go to that
because
yet.
you threw free will into the mix.
Well, that was the answer to your question.
Yeah, this is interesting. So Peterson wants to throw free will out there, and religious people like to do this because they think they've got solid ground for free will because God gave it to us. When the fact of the matter, as this young man is about to point out, is that if God is omniscient and omnipotent, then he knows everything that is ever going to happen, past, present, and future, which means free will is out. Now, Peterson's going to try to push back on this, as religious people often do. They try to split hairs and make distinctions that don't actually have a difference. But the young man is right to pick up on this. But this whole thing is like spaghetti, the way that it moves around, this debate. And it's not the fault of these young people. It's the fact that Peterson will not stay on track and actually deep dive into a subject and lay out in some clear manner what he's thinking and why people should take it seriously.
Well,
it's
1,000 years of deep thinking philosophers would disagree with you. But have
and
it your
1,000 years of, or at least like the last 50 years of philosophers would disagree with you, these analytic philosophers.
Yeah, nothing like an argument from authority and ad populum here to top this all off. That was pretty crazy. Why can't we just point to truths? Jordan, why do we have to go to, the smart people know better? What are you going to do? I mean, there's an argument from intimidation packed into this, like the young man's supposed to, regard other people's or great thinkers from the past as more important than truth as he sees it. Thank you, no. And kudos to him for standing his ground.